All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Saber Academy. Darth Anonymous coming to you from Terra Prime headquarters. We've got a good class here. Today. So we'll show them there real quick. So that's who's in the peanut gallery. As we do, we will try to get to anything that comes into the chat feed on YouTube, but otherwise, sorry. But go ahead and leave it there. We'll try to get to them if we can, and probably in a later episode as well. All right. So anyway, today I wanted to kind of go into a little bit into philosophical territory here, and talk a little bit about the way our system is set up and how everything kind of interweaves and everything like that. And of course, our achievement system, which most of the people in the gallery here are a part of. If you want to be a student with us, that's the path that you go. And so I'll bring you up a little bit to date on that. And then we'll show you some techniques and things as we go. Okay, so anyway, we really emphasize, and as you can probably tell from this class, from what we do, if you're following us on Facebook or any place like that, is we really emphasize Shicho, Form 1. That's our bread and butter for lightsaber. Now, it is technically two-handed, so a lot of people will make the connection to two-handed styles, and kind of be discriminatory in that sense. It doesn't really work that way. You can use these one-handed. I'll show you a little bit about how that kind of works there as well. But the main point is that our Shicho material, stuff that we've put together here, literally forms the base, and these things follow you through every single step of the way. So even when you get to Form 4, right? Even when you get to Form 5, when you're a knight, right, and you're using Form 5, you're now taking these concepts and extrapolating them in different fashion. So it's not like you get new material. It's basically you generate new material from your old material. And so that's kind of analogous to how things evolve, how people learn, all of that kind of thing. We're constantly kind of changing it, so it's constantly being tweaked and maneuvered a little bit, because we learn something new all the time. This works better here. It's better to kind of do it this way. We've changed a little bit of our process for people coming in. So we've got students who are more casual and going this, and then we have apprentices who are paired with a knight and stuff like that, and who actually are officers within TPLA. We're going to have more opportunities for even more ways that you can get involved, so some memberships and all of that. But the main point is when we're learning this stuff, Shicho forms our base. You then take that to Form 2, right? And you start to, use those concepts there together with your Form 1 concepts. The idea is not that that Form 1, you finish Form 1 and then you move on. You finish Form 1, you don't finish it. That's probably the wrong term, right? You get enough of it that you can study it on your own, right? And then you are now allowed to take on this as well, right? But it's never an exclusatory thing saying, okay, now that's over, we can focus on this, or what have you. Because what it is the stuff that comes before is the stuff that you will have to focus on in the next one as well. So we've done a couple of classes with side by side where we've gone through basically the formulas for Form 1 and 2, right? Now, these are very, very simple formulas, very, very simple ideas. All of these things can be done by anybody of any level or any ability, right? And once you get that, once you get the basics down, it really doesn't matter where, where you come from. So the reason Form 1 and Form 2, right, is because Form 1 is going to be, this is really your basic body mechanics, right? And then Form 2 is we're kind of manipulating them in a little bit for a particular context, right? Again, we don't ever want to leave anything behind, right? So we take the basic footwork and all of that. Now, if you're following the student, or I should say the achievement system, the first level that you're going to achieve if you pass your whatever is your student level achievement. Okay, so you must, in order to become an apprentice with us, where you're paired with a knight, right? You must have at least a student level proficiency in Shicho, the entire form. Okay, that means all the way up through velocities. We test you in various things using Shicho. So when you come in, you'll use the Dulon, an attempt at the Dulon, and then you'll have to, when you get accepted, you then break it down, and then you see all of those little component pieces, and you get all of those component pieces, in a line. Once you achieve all of that, you have your student level Shicho, right? Now, what that means is you're allowed to then go study that on your own and explore it and do all of that kind of thing. It does not mean that you are, you are done with it. You are now good with it, and then you move on, right? You continually do it. You're always doing it. As I always say, if you ever come to a class of mine, you will do Shicho. That's all I do. That's all we do, right, in a class, because that's one thing that everybody can do, right, and everybody should do, and not enough people do. So anyway, so that's the thing. We have these levels. So student level, what does that mean? It's analogous to how black belt used to mean, right? Black belt now, people, it's kind of elevated beyond where it was. When you got your black belt, you were considered to be a beginner most of the time in a traditional system. So that was your first step. Like, okay, you've gotten all of the kind of, mundane precursor stuff out of the way. You're fit. Now you can start learning the style, right? And then you kind of move up from there. Our next level, when people get to it, that the knights achieve and all of this, is mechanic, right? And that means that you can take these pieces very freely and combine them and turn them into novel things pretty much at the drop of a hat. You can use it to discern drills and exercises, to teach classes, to teach specific skills, to teach general skills, all of that kind of thing. The ins and outs of the interactions of this particular method or style or form in our case, right? And then our last highest form is philosopher, where you are basically taking and generating new material from the style as the style, maybe making your own style, but taking a very, very deep approach to it with a very deep and thorough knowledge of it. So those are our three levels. When people get the first one, remember that is student. You've achieved your student level, right? So now the real work begins studying, right? That's why many people start with the Dulon, and this is why we use this as our entry level thing, right? So people go and they learn the form, okay? And that's a good thing to do because it makes sense, right? There's a sequence. It's like a dance. Okay, I go from here, I go from here. It's not very boring, right? It's, whatever. You're gonna do what you do. right? Now, once you pass that, if we don't see that that you have, you know, the formula or the basics or the flavor of it down, then you go back and we tweak it and you know all of that. So it's more of like when you first attempt something, you can attempt it as a sketch, right? And that's really what we encourage people to do, or what I'm encouraging people to do. Approach some of the stuff. If you want to become a student with us, right, you're going to want to learn that first Dulon, right? And which is that form, okay? But remember, it's a sketch, right? And then as you go on, we'll help you fill in where it is, right? Now, the real stuff happens behind the scenes when you really start to explore the very little things. So that's really there. Now, the importance of knowing this about how everything fits together is because when you get to standing like this, right? Now, I have a bad habit of holding my hand here with a lightsaber. I don't recommend that. I've learned very, you know, put that behind your hand because you can't grab the blade. That's really what this is here for, and to this, and this will count as a hit. So I put this now behind me. But anyway, once I get to here, right, there's a little bit more of a physical demand on my body, right? I'm now unevenly weighted, right? So I have the weapon in one hand, but I do not have the weapon in the other hand, okay? Now, this is another reason why people will put it somewhere here, right? It's not necessarily, really, honestly, it doesn't really matter where you put this, right? You can put it here, you can put it here, 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 here. What you don't want to happen is to have it dangle, right? You don't want this, okay? Because this is a lot of extra weight, which is now not being controlled, okay? And it will have an effect on you. You may not notice it, but it does have an effect, right? So having it anywhere here, right, keeps it to our body. So now we have more. We can move in the crisper fashion, right? Now, the other thing that's going to help us, all of this, is to know how to create force in the blade, okay? And with one hand, if you start with two hands, right, it actually becomes a little bit easier, okay? And the reason is because when we're using two hands, okay, the rear hand is the force hand, meaning this is what's making things move fast, hit hard, all of that. This is relatively relaxed. This is basically just putting it where it needs to go, right? So if I want to come down from zone 2 to zone 6 in a slash here, right? And I'm coming through here late. All I do is bring my fist to that area, and then I use this to then pull that strike through. Okay. Now, once you realize this, right, you realize that this hand doesn't really have to do a whole lot. Okay. When we take this force though away, we have to make it do this. And as you see, right, I'm going like here. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to mimic what my arm is doing when it's just following this. So if you see, it starts doing this, right? You'll get it up here in the shoulder because that's really where this is going to come from, okay? Get it in the shoulder by using two hands, right? And then when you are doing it one-handed, it will be easier, right? Because you're going to be using a large complex of muscles, your shoulder, which is against your body, is connected to your core, right? Your arm then can remain relatively relaxed, right? And not have to worry about it. Now, when we do our moon guards, if we do them here with two hands, you can see they still work. Take it behind. But when I use two hands, I have to really accentuate that waist turn, right? I have to know how it changes my body, my posture, right? Okay. So when I say that Shicho is our biomechanical form, that's really what I mean. This is really going to teach your body how to do the things that it needs to do, right? Now, if you are coming from a one-handed kind of style, like a fencer or somebody who does primarily rapier and HEMA, or if you're, in Kung Fu, most of it is one-handed, except for a couple of notable examples. Otherwise, then this, using two hands may feel a little bit odd, right, at first, right? But you can always think of that as this being just kind of added in to your normal movements, right? Okay. Now, this is one of the reasons why the styles of Chinese martial art that I've studied will often, if not always, start people out on weapons training with a stick, okay? And not using it as a sword, but using it as a stick, even though in the Ming Dynasty, they did call any weapon you used a sword. So go figure that one out. Anyway, when you're using that stick, and I'll just, right, you see, you're getting, again, lots of biomechanical work done, right? So if I do here, right, right, all of that kind of stuff, again, it helps keep all of our body moving together, right? And that's what will happen a lot of times when people get into here, is they start getting real army, right? Where they're just kind of they're doing this, that kind of stuff, right? That will very, very quickly lead to overuse injuries, right? When we're here, we're really trying to focus all of that kind of stuff in the body. Now, that's going to even go further when we start getting into Suresu Ataru, okay? Suresu, we have our orbits, right? Just like that, right? And then with Ataru, we have our Suma. Right, which is slashing through here like that. Now, the motion for both orbit and Suma are often identical, right? Again, there's only so many ways we can move this and move this, right? What really has to happen is we have to have our intention straight. Are we intending to cut, or are we intending to parry? Let's take the orbit, right? Or figure eight, or whatever you call them in your style, this right here. Now, oftentimes, it is said that if I am not cutting with each of these, right, then I am doing it wrong. That's not necessarily true, right? Now, that is one way to do it. I can cut through, right? I can come through, cut through, and use that orbit as a follow through, right? As I come through here like this and leave the target, I bring it around there. But when I'm coming around here like this, these are my parries, right? I'm standing like this, shots coming in here, I can roll that around to affect a parry right there. And of course, if I'm in my ASL rule set, I'm arming my strike to come forward again, right? So you can cut, right, with your orbits, right? And that would be a target, right? But you can just use your orbits as movement. Basically, I'm moving my sword or my weapon from one position to the other so that I can block each of the zones without necessarily having to expend a whole lot of effort, right? If I'm here like this, right, this is, you know, if I can just let this fall and be able to parry like that. So that's where you see a whole lot of these, that kind of thing, right? Is we're going in here like that, okay? So again, cutting, sure, but not always, right? If I'm doing this, what I'm really doing is I'm trying to line up where my blade is, right? So as you see, it's going very close to my body, right? I'm not out like this, right? It's right here, okay? Now, one thing I do want to do though is be able to cross my center, right? And that's going to come again from waist. Okay. When I'm doing the behind the back, again, you see, it's waist. Okay.
Hey, Chad, can I ask a question or two?
Yeah, sure.
And maybe an observation just to reframe it, make sure I get where you're coming from with it. And it's all good stuff. You know, some of it's unique. You were just doing with the orbits. One thing I noticed, and I don't know whether it's a concept you align with or not, is that you could also be employing a false edge mechanic with the return. With the orbit return, you actually are engaging the false edge, if you want to call it that. And so it's still a cutting mechanic, even though someone argued that it's not, if they're coming from a single edge perspective.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Anytime you come through, it doesn't matter with this.
Right. It's 360 degrees of cutting edge in our mythological sword. Yes.
What we're talking about here is like this. Now, where the complaint comes in is people are like this, and like people see this.
Right. Where you're hitting with the flat, not the edge.
Right.
As you come back to the arc.
Again, this is what I'm talking about. This is totally okay, because this isn't really talking about hitting, right? What I'm doing is I'm probably deflecting, right? As I'm coming through here, and I want that flat a little bit here and off to an angle so that it can deflect out, right? Now, as I'm coming back like this, yes, I can cut this way as well, right? I can cut either way. And one of the reasons of this, you know, so the style that my stuff is derived from is Wudang Jin. And we have...
Well, that's what and I'm not a Wudang guy, but I recognize that's what it was. And so I don't know if Wudang incorporates a false edge or not, whether that's something they think about.
Well, yeah, no, we don't call it the false edge, but yeah. So we have basically, in the classical sense, we have 13 techniques. There's some extra depending on what school you're in.
Sure.
And all that. But specifically what we're talking about is two particular techniques called essentially Qi and Xi, right? Which is striking with the edge, right? And deflecting kind of with the flat.
Oh, okay.
Now we have the we can also, we have G, which is to block, and it's not specific. There's nothing in these words that are telling you flat or edge, right? But when I do G, I'm going to probably do it
Use the edge.
more
So you're
edge
using
on,
your
because what I want to do is I want to use the blade geometry here to
Gotcha.
be able to stop something. Whereas with the flat, I'm going to do this. Now, xi in Chinese means to wash, right? But it's a Ming Dynasty term, so don't think about washing like that, but think of a washboard, okay?
Gotcha.
So the action of xi is this. So when I want
sliding
something
against
to
the flat, I
slide
get it.
off my blade here like this,
Yeah,
I'm going to use that. Now, what is this? This is G. This is striking, right? Because it's striking here with the edge. Now, I also have my tip attacks, right? Which are kind of analogous to that. But other than saying, like, this is Dian and this is Tiao, or Bong, whichever one you want to use, right? This, right? It's not really necessarily talking about this necessarily, although it is true. It's talking about this action, because this action, again, is dotting, right? And that comes from calligraphy. So if you're using a pen and you do a dot, you do it like that. So that motion is seen
that's cool.
dot, right? Boom. But it's not, and technically, Dian is with the true edge, Tiao is with the false edge, but it's never explicitly stated that way, right? So true and false edge are terms we're borrowing in from Western martial arts and stuff like that. We don't really use those particular terms. Some people will use yang and yin, but there's so many times when you'll switch hands sometimes in Chinese swordplay, right?
That's cool.
You throw it up, it spins around. It really, when you're dealing with the Jian, there isn't a lot of, let's keep track of where our true edge and our false edge are.
That's interesting.
But so yeah. So when we're talking about the orbits like that, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Are you coming through here like this? Are you making good cuts? Right? Well, sure. You can, like I said, you can do the good cuts. But even if I'm doing this, right, and that's my point, is this is not necessarily wrong, because what I'm doing from here is I can come over, and as you see, right?
Yeah.
And then here's my guards, right? If I don't let my tip travel, I'm using that there. So again, when you're dealing with the system, the stuff that comes before it, how does form 2 relate to 3 and 4, right? Because if form 2 kind of eschews any of these fancy moves that go behind here, because we know our opponent is right there, right? We know that they're armed with a weapon like ours, and therefore we know what our parameters are, right? So where does all of that stuff come in here, right? But these positions, right? Remember, these not only talk about, our global positioning of our thing, but also how we're holding our sword. So if I'm holding it here like this is my half moon position. That's my full moon position. And that's my new moon position. Right? Regardless of where that is in relation to my body, right? So if I'm holding it like this, but I'm holding it here, right? I can have a very low position for that particular guard, right? So I'm up here like this, and that will give me, certain opportunities. When we are talking about the spheres, right? If we're talking about our photosphere, right? Here's the beginning of our orbits there too, right? The first orbit that we do, the first major orbit, the very first one that we ever do is, I already gave this out to everybody, so this is kind of a trick question. Anyway, the first orbit that you ever do in our system is Sarlacc sweep. Okay, so that's this. Right? It's an upward orbit. We don't necessarily do it that much, but when you do it with in the smallest sense, in the shim sense, right, it can look very much like that upward orbit. And it really is. That's the body mechanics. Okay. When we're dealing with Shicho here, coming around here like that. Okay. Okay. Obviously our halo orbits right there and all of that. So you've got your photosphere, right? You've got this cone from our spheres, right? And now you can take that and you can start to move it around your body, right? So you have here. So if you think about it, we separate it into circle and grid. So circle and square, right? Straight and curved. And if you think, you can think about it that way, where you have flat planes that you're defending through circular motion here, right? In both the body and all of that. Once you have all of that kind of together, adding something where at the very end of that movement, there's a powerful, right, strike. Anything like that. Okay, I can do it on, like while I'm doing this, right? I can do it after. I can switch. I can do, whatever I want, right? If I have that, as long as we, layer it up like that, even the most complicated of things is actually fairly simple.
Yeah, I get it. That's a really cool. Thank you for demonstrating that. The other thing I'm getting is that if I'm interpreting what you're teaching correctly, as far as transmission, is you're getting that you're maintaining, and this is the cool thing about longsword, two-handed longsword. It really gets your skeleton and power generation and symmetry, all working. And so your message is kind of make sure you're carrying that same kind of biomechanical philosophy forward into single hand. Because interestingly enough, watching you move now, I'm realizing that Wudang is in many ways a departure from what we think of as even high Renaissance rapier, because there is much more body mechanic. And I don't know if that's because you're walking the hexagram or whatever, but your body is moving and rotating much more than, let's say, a standard rapier fighter would. And I'm kind of getting that's what you're sending forward into Form 2 from Form 1.
Yeah. I mean, I should make the point. There is really very little in common with rapier and Wudang Jian. I know the comparison is made a lot, right? That this is like the Chinese rapier or whatever.
I mean, there are some spots where there's a your guards, your parries. Some of those are similar, but the body mechanic is very much more.
By the time, if you wanted, if there's a better analogy in Western martial arts for kind of 20th century Wudang Jian, which is like small sword stuff.
Sure, side sword or even late period saber.
Side sword, small sword. Now, as you go back in time, you're going to get more, arming sword. Now, if you go into Han Dynasty, now you're getting into some rapiery type of swords with very thin, long blades.
Sure.
But yeah, the swords in China is a very interesting topic. Obviously, we touch on it from time to time. Swords actually, it seems like swords actually kind of go down in quality as you get closer into the modern era. Han Tang Dynasty seems to be the high period for that, and there are some fantastic blades, and that's what's so kind of cool about LK Chen, who's coming out. Ben has done a lot of reviews is because those are Han Dynasty weapons, which have not been reproduced very much in, there, because well, there's not that, I mean, we have archaeological examples, right? But many of them are not very well preserved or whatever. But
Sure.
anyway, that's a different that's a different thing. Anyway, my point is yes, when you have two hands on it, you are getting those body mechanics. When you use one hand, you want to continue those body mechanics, right? So when I'm here like this, I'm still, right, if I put my hand on there or take it off, nothing much changes, right? And the thing about it is with a lightsaber, since we're not dealing with radically different weights in weapons, and our blades are relatively insubstantial, right? You don't
have to work hard at it.
Easy to get the same speed and control with one hand that you can with two. So it might be a little confusing to people because you can't really feel the advantage of it. But the nice thing about it is that you have that body mechanic. So where it's here. So now, of course, in Form 2, you're doing it that way. But even when you're doing Form 3, body position is paramount, right? If you want to be able to do effortless orbits where you can just spin this here, like right now I'm a little sore because we're reopening the athletic facility and we're moving lots of weights everywhere, and I'm sore in very odd positions or very odd muscles because it's just very strange. But I can do this pretty much effortlessly in whatever condition I'm at because it's not just my arm, it's not just my hand, it's my whole body. Everything down from my feet, right, all the way up. There's a kind of spiraling energy that goes through there. It doesn't really take a whole lot of energy for me to do this. It's one of these things where it's just it's a nice little movement prep, right? And it's very intuitive, right? So it's very, very useful, right? But obviously, it's abstract and it's just that when you're going, piece to piece, you take little pieces of those. That didn't make a whole lot of sense, but and what I'm saying is we take this, right? And then that can become this, right? And then it can become this, and then that, right? All the same body mechanics there, right? One of my first teachers was fond of saying that the arms never move, right? And sure, they move through space, right? But the idea is that your body is moving your arms, okay? I use the analogy of like if you've ever slept on an arm before, you've got it up and it's just dangling there, right? And you have to use your whole body to get it to flop over or something like that. That's an extreme example of it. But when we're doing, let's say the orbits here, the body motion, right? And there's a little bit of arm, right? Now the arm goes in and out. What? Does somebody have a question? No? Okay. So when we're doing this, the arm kind of goes in and out, right? What we call the pump, because we're just adding just a little bit of energy to what we're doing. Okay. So really what's happening is this is falling. All right. And then we're just nudging it in there. That's why I call it an orbit. Obviously, because it goes around the body, but there's also that sense. If this has been a common thing that's been being put out there, is that, weightlessness in space, when people are like in the space shuttle and all of that, is not due to the fact that they're out of Earth's gravity. If they were in geosynchronous orbit, they would actually not have much of a problem walking around or anything like that. What it is that they are constantly falling. So when you're in orbit, you're being pulled into the planet's gravity, and then you're kind of going off to the side, but it's constantly pulling you in, but you're also falling off of it at the same time. So you maintain 0 G's, right? That's the kind of idea that we're getting here, right? When we're talking orbits, is this kind of effortless feeling. And it's a weapon handling exercise, right? It's just so that I can practice getting my weapon around, getting things where I want them, and to be able to control them, right? You should be able to stop your orbits anytime you want, all right? That's why we start with the big ones, right? Major orbits first, right? And then into the little ones. The major orbits are going to be much more useful for you in all ways, but they're the ones that most people don't do as much. So there's that.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I like what you're saying about the orbits, and you gave a pretty sound argument for orbits that aren't only true edge, and because when you teach true edge orbits, they're actually harder. If that's all you do, if that's all you allow, so to speak, they become mechanically harder for a lot of folks. So, having a doctrine that enables not only true edge orbits, that is actually easier and better to teach.
Well, right. If you're going to do a true edge cut on every revolution, right, then you're not really doing the orbit, right? Because what I have to do, I come in here like this, and I cut through here like this, and then I go here. And it's more like doing one orbit over here, right? Whereas when I swing them when I move them together to be able to come up to here and then just go through here like that, that's where I can get that. Right now, at any point, I can do that cut, right? But in order to do that, I have to then change the orientation of my hand and come through, right? Which breaks the momentum of this particular weapon here, right? So
thanks. I didn't mean to derail us with all the questions, but thanks for your
comments. Okay, no. We're not, questions are what we're here for. So. All right, so.
I have a question. When practicing orbits, do you suggest a specific footwork drill? Or, because I know you've made comments before in watching Saber videos of people just standing there and spinning their saber or doing whatever. When spinning, do you suggest any specific footwork drills that we could do alongside spinning them that still work with the mechanics of the rotations?
Say that again?
Oh, I was wondering if there are any footwork drills that we could do alongside when spinning that work well alongside the spinning and the rotation mechanics, rather than just spinning with the arm or the wrist, like you were saying.
Well, yes, that's what is in the formula of Saresu. We have our circular steps. We have this. We have walking on the grid, turning the circle. All of these ways that you're going to do it. Again, all of that's based on, do you know where your weapon is? Can you control that weapon, right? And will you be able to do what you want with the weapon as you right?
Cool, thanks.
So yeah, so it's yes, I mean obviously there's all kinds of footwork. Pardon me. So so yeah, that's it. So that's whenever we have that, and when you are doing these orbits and stuff like that, you will have, right, you want to be able to walk and all of this other stuff, right, and do all of that cool things, right? And again, you just have to continually build up this footwork stuff.
It
And
looked like for a second you did a really cool, just when you were talking earlier, to me it looked like a cool drill where you were avoiding and doing the orbit at the same time. So you're using the orbit as a parry and you're avoiding space at the same time. I couldn't replicate what you were doing, but it looked like a cool drill just right there, with those two steps.
well, yeah, I mean the orbit, the walking the grid and turning the circle and all of that kind of thing that you see on our videos is all kind of where those gains come from. Anyway, so do we have any other particular questions? I'm checking the social media pages here. See if we have anything going there. Let's see. We've got, how do we avoid tendinitis? Okay, well, there's a lot of good stuff there. I would say the best thing to do is try to not force anything. Move slow, be relaxed. Don't put a whole lot of force into things. That everybody has that problem right at the beginning. They just try to muscle their way through it. Whoops. And as you can see, I'm pretty sore. But yeah, just try to keep the forces very, very light on your body. And that should reduce some of it. Now, if you have a movement compensation in there, you may run into some things. So one day we'll probably go into some exercises that are specific for keeping yourself healthy in that respect. But that's another really good reason why you should stay with Shicho and why you should go through all of this stuff, because it's those body mechanics which are going to prevent you from overuse injuries like tendinitis and all of that kind of thing. So it's very, very important that body mechanics are there, especially when you're going into one-handed stuff, because again, like I said, your body's now out of balance. And when it's out of balance, that's when it is the most vulnerable. So that's the thing. And just here's some general fitness tips. It is never usually, I shouldn't say never, but it is almost never a problem with flexibility or with strength when people get injured. Because lots of people say, oh, you need to stretch more. Oh, you need more flexibility. Oh, you need to get stronger, whatever. What it usually is the strength and the flexibility are not balanced, right? Meaning you have enough strength, but you only have that strength in a specific range of motion, right? And that's where you're really going to run into your problems, is you have forces going through your body, especially when we're talking about weapons, right, that are now going to get caught in places that may be out of alignment. And that's really what when we talk about like energy getting caught in somewhere, it's not a magical thing. What it is, it's basically just force. If I'm going through here like this and I have good posture, right? Even if I'm using one hand, okay, the shock that hits my saber, then goes into my hand, will go through my elbow, my shoulder, into my spine, down through my hips, into my knees, and into the ground. By the time it goes through all of those joints, it gets reduced in every single one of those, and it gets shared between the whole thing, right? So then I'm not going to get that tennis elbow thing here, right? Tennis elbow is something that we all have to watch out for, which is is tendonitis of your biceps femoris, or your humeral bicep right here. So getting pain in here like this, and this comes from having shock while your wrist is bent back like this, right? When everything is kind of like pulled tight, because as you see, when I'm here like this pops out right there, and that's what will give you a lot of that tendonitis there for like tennis elbow and stuff like that. But yeah, that shock that comes in is going to go through your body. Make sure that it can go through your body, and then it'll be okay, right? Don't let it stop. Okay. But again, basic body mechanics and all of that. All right. So, okay. Do we have any more questions here as I'm looking through more of our outlets? So many of these. Anything? Anything more? Okay, well, that then kind of brings me to the end of my plans for what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully, people found that a little interesting, informative, if you're looking to get involved with what's going on. Now, this is, of course, this is the martial art aspect of it. It doesn't really matter if you're into the ASL FFE rule set, if you're into Saber Legion, if you're into Ludo Sport, whatever, right? These are as much as we can make them as universal principles as possible. So hopefully we can get that way. We had a last minute thing coming here. I want to start to learn what's the best way to begin. Well, if you go back to the beginning of this particular video, you will know that you always start at the first step. So start at form 1, right? You always start at number 1, right? I will leave you with musings of one of my favorite movies, 36 Chambers of Shaolin, right? Where he wants to go right to the end, right to the 36th chamber, and he goes in there and it's just a bunch of monks meditating, right? So that's a very, very good lesson. And then of course they push him back without touching him, and he says, okay, I'll start 1 down. But he has to start from the beginning. Anyway, that is an important lesson. I think one of our friends, if you watch the symposium this year, Gene Cheng probably summed it up the best. A lot of people get into this stuff and into the martial arts because it's fun, because it's exotic and all this stuff, and they're looking for kind of excitement and all that kind of stuff. And there is so much of martial arts which is not that at all, right? It's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of, oh, I have to go back and I have to do this again, right? And it's just this long slog, and it never ends. I'm doing it all the time right now, right? Every time I see my teacher, right? I have to redo everything that I have done before, right? That's the act, right? I want to put that forward. That's the act. That's why we have that student mechanic philosophy. No masters or anything like that. It's not an end goal. It's a process. Where are you in that process? How are you working with this stuff, right? That's really what's important, right? The effort. I don't really care how far you go. If all you ever do is the Shicho form, Shicho Julan, that's great, fine. if you're getting fulfillment from that, who am I to argue, right? I'm glad you found something that you like, right? If you want to go further, we have the ability, right? That's all I'm saying. So, all right, well, if we don't have anything else here for the last part here, all right. Well, I guess then we will call it for today. Have a good day. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back next week and do something else, I guess. Everybody stay safe out there. Wear your mask. Keep your distance. Patience, practice, perseverance. Happy sabering.
Thank you.